Hi, I'm John. I'm so happy to be here. And this is a great crowd. And the Next Web is such a good conference. So thank you for welcoming me. I want to talk today about how we can retain our users and build more engaging product experiences by actually changing the way we think about product design. But first, let me ask a question to the audience. How many of you are currently in a relationship? Oh, wow, OK. More than the last event I spoke at. But so I want to tell you about my very first relationship. And it happened when I was in the second grade at this place right here. This is my elementary school in Oklahoma in the US. About the middle of the second grade, a girl moved into our class from out of town. Her name was Lindsay. And right away, I was just like in love with Lindsay. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to go out with Lindsay. And that's what we called it in elementary school. We'd say you were going out. And you didn't actually go out. You didn't do anything, actually. You just said, you were going out. But it meant you were, boyfriend, girlfriend. So that's what was going to happen with Lindsay and I. But it wasn't happening for me. I was trying to do all the things that you need to do to start a relationship in the second grade. I found a dead spider on the ground, and I threw it in her hair. But she wasn't having it. I was like, well, come on, I'm trying here. I'm putting myself out there. All year long, Lindsay did not like me. The whole class knew I had a crush on her. Finally, the last day of school came around, and we're in the lunchroom, and I'm kind of sitting over with the boys, and the girls are sitting over here. We didn't really talk, but we passed notes back and forth. And we get a note at our table that says, Lindsay will go out with John if Dave goes out with Erica, right? So drama. And I'm like, Dave's one of my best friends. I'm like, Dave, this is awesome. You just got to go out with Erica, and Lindsay's going to be my girlfriend. And Dave's like, I don't know. My mom's going to be so mad at me if she finds out I'm going out with Erica. I'm not allowed to have a girlfriend. I'm like, Dave, please. And he's a good friend, so he says, OK. So we send a note back. Dave says yes. And then a note comes back. Lindsay says yes. So it's like the best day of my life. I'm like run out on the playground, like doing cartwheels, carving our initials into trees. I wasn't hanging out with Lindsay on the playground because you don't really do that. But she was my girlfriend. So happy. 20 minutes later, Dave comes up. He's like, John. He looks a little sad. He's like, John, I'm really sorry to tell you, but I broke up with Erica. And so Lindsay broke up with me, and that was the end of my relationship. And I've spent the past 25 years trying to figure out what went wrong with Lindsay and I, like what were we missing. And maybe some of you at the end of a relationship have kind of asked the same question, where did we go wrong? And as I think about this, I've come to the conclusion that there are some fundamental things that every successful relationship has that failed relationships are missing. And I've also come to the conclusion that the core ingredients for a successful relationship are the same core ingredients for a successful product. Failed relationships actually look a lot like bad product experiences. At the beginning of last year, I was in this New Year's resolution mindset, and I was in an Apple store, and I came across a product that looked kind of like this. It was a connected scale, and I had personally set a New Year's resolution that I was going to gain like 10 pounds last year. It didn't happen, but at the beginning of the year, I was like, I'm going to do this, and I found this product that I thought would help me achieve that goal, and so I purchased the scale, and I went home, and I was ready to kick off this relationship with this scale, and I couldn't get it set up. I had the app on my phone. I was trying to pair it, and it was so complicated. And it was like we were speaking a different language. And it was giving me error messages. It was flashing some lights, and I didn't speak scale. And I'm like, how do I get this to work? And I actually got a little bit emotional and frustrated, as you sometimes do with bad product experiences. And I put it aside, and I came back to it a couple days later, and I actually did finally get it set up. And I was willing to sort of forgive and move on. I was like, it was a rocky start, but I want to make it work with this product. So the first week, I was weighing myself every day, not seeing much change. The next week, I just weighed myself a couple times. And finally, life got busy, and I stopped using the scale. And there was nothing engaging, really, about my experience with that scale or with the app that brought me back to it. And I finally just gave up on it. And ultimately, when I stopped using it, it didn't feel just like a failed product, but it actually felt to me like the end of a bad relationship, because product design is relationship design. So I want to share with you a few a few core ingredients of relationship design. But first, let me ask you if you've heard this phrase. I think we've all heard this phrase, to build something people love. And it's something we say a lot. And I think it's a good phrase, and it's a good call to action for designers to build something people love. But it's actually only half of the equation. Because when you start a relationship, you're not just saying, I want to start this relationship so the other person will love me. But it's actually relationships, we need to love the other person back, right? So yes, we should build something people love. We should build products that users love to interact with, but we also need to build products that love users. So three core relationship ingredients that you can apply to any product. The first one, quality time. No matter what your product is, you want users to engage with it. If you're building an app or a service or a website or a web app, whatever it is, you want users to spend time with it. Apps, though, are actually, there's statistics that show that 85% of mobile phone users actually only use 5 apps a day. So you're competing with a lot of other products to have users choose to engage with your product. So I work for a company called Canary. And Canary, it's a hardware device that has in it a HD camera and other sensors that sort of help you monitor your home, gather information, and then send you notifications for things that you might want to know about. Like maybe it's a notification if there's someone breaking into your home or that your cat's doing something funny. And one of our goals was to be one of the 5 apps that our users engage with on a daily basis. And so we set out to try to design an interface that would encourage people to spend quality time in the app. And our first iteration of it looked a little bit like this. And this was the app that we were sort of alpha testing, and we found that it wasn't actually getting people to engage with it much. The idea behind it was we were like, let's use some human language. Let's try to make it to where the app is sort of talking to the user when they open it up. But we found that users were exiting the app pretty quickly because it was almost like treating it like a status update. Like you would check the app and be like, oh, there's really nothing here for me to do. So we went through some various iterations and landed with a main interface that looks a little bit more like this. And what we did is we identified what are the most engaging aspects or the most engaging features of our product, and we tried to give them more prominence right at the beginning when you open the app. So because there's a camera in it, watching the video from your home is actually the most engaging thing you can do with the product. So we brought a watch live button right to the front. And then the other thing is there's a timeline feature, and it's kind of like rather than spending time scrolling through Instagram, we're trying to say, hey, you can spend time scrolling through a feed of what's happened in your home, and actually get people to engage with when their kids got home from school or see videos of funny things their pets are doing. And we found that by doing this, by focusing more on the highest engagement features, we had people spending quality time in the app and time with the product that made it more felt fun and felt worthwhile as opposed to feeling tedious, how some relationships or some products can feel. So the second thing is crisis management. Every relationship is going to hit some rocky points, right? It's impossible to be with someone and to not go through something that's frustrating or stressful. And what happens, though, is a crisis in a relationship can go one of 2 ways. It's either going to make you stronger, you're going to come out the other end of it better and more committed, or it actually could cause your relationship to unravel. And this is true with humans, and it's true with products as well. So another, Canary is actually designed to handle crises. That's one of the main points of it. And so a quick example of this, here's a user, his name's Steve Pugh, a Canary user, who had a Canary set up in his home, and there was a man that broke in, and this is a screenshot of that. Steve got a notification on his phone that said there was unexpected activity in his home, and his experience would have looked something like this. And he saw this man in his home, and he had to kind of resolve this situation. And at this moment, the product could fail. What I mean by that is it could fail to deliver on helping Steve resolve this crisis. And if that happened, the user, Steve, would lose trust in the product, and he probably wouldn't want to use it anymore. But if the product succeeded in helping him manage and overcome this crisis, then he would become an even stronger advocate for the product afterwards. So Steve actually used the app to sound the siren, and he called the police. And when he sounded the siren, the man ran out of the home, and the police actually arrested him there in the neighborhood right outside. And Steve went from being someone who just used the product, who had a casual relationship with the product, and it turned into a committed relationship because of this experience of getting through a crisis and coming out stronger on the other end. Now, no matter what product you're working on, it doesn't have to be a home security product. Whatever you're working on, what you can do, tomorrow if you want to go and apply this crisis management principle is to identify what are the major pain points or what's something that a user could go through that would be difficult or stressful, and then brainstorm what are ways that we can actually hold hands with our user through that process and make it turn a negative experience into a positive experience. And if you can find ways to overcome a crisis together, your users are going to actually love your product more on the other end of that crisis. So finally, one last point is a little magic. And this is something that every relationship wants. And as designers, we often use the term surprise and delight, but it means sort of the same thing. You want it in a relationship and you want it with a product. And sometimes we try to get to this too early. My parents have been married for 40 years, and if they go to a restaurant together, they can sit down and order food for the other person, and then when the food arrives, it's exactly what they wanted. They just can anticipate what the other person wants and what they need. And sometimes in relationships, we try to rush into this too early. Let's imagine for a second that these two fine-looking youngsters are on a first date, and the menus come out, and he grabs the menu from her and says, no, I know exactly what you want to order. I'm going to order for you. Maybe that's okay with her, but probably a little bit overbearing. Or maybe a little bit later in the date, she's telling a story, trying to get to know him, trying to tell him about herself, and he interrupts her and says, here, have a bite of my steak. And she's like, well, I'm in the middle of trying to get to know you. I want to build a little relationship here with you. But if he's too pushy, then there's no foundation to build upon. And it's funny because all of you are probably like, yeah, obviously, first date 101, we get it. But we make these exact same mistakes when designing products. Sometimes our products actually act like bad first dates. So I'll give you an example. Just the other day, I was reading about running lingo. I'm not a runner, but I guess I like to read about the lingo. This is my first time on this website. And I start reading the article. I'm interested in it. I've been on the site for like 10 seconds. As I scroll down and I'm reading about it, this thing pops up right in front of me. It says, do you want to be your healthiest self? It's not a bad question. Like, yes, I do want to be my healthiest self. But like, why are you asking me this? I just got to the site. I'm in the middle of engaging with some content, and you're interrupting me, asking me this question. And I don't even know what to do. I guess I'll say yes because yes, I do. So I say yes, and of course it's like, okay, so sign up for our email list. And I totally understand what the product designers are trying to do here, or maybe what the marketing team is trying to do, is they want me to be on their email list. But to me, this just seemed like a really bad interruption to what could have been an engaging experience with the website. So no, I didn't put my email in here. No, I don't want to go on a second date with you. I said, no, thanks. And I'm not particularly interested in going back to that site. So whatever you're building, you don't want to be a bad first date. You want to make sure that you are listening to your users as much as you're talking to them. So a great example of this, a product that does this really well, probably that we all use, is Netflix. Netflix is a fantastic first date. You probably all use Netflix, and so it's been a while since you went through the onboarding experience, or the first date experience, as I like to call it. But it's really great. When you first create your account, the first thing it does is it asks you about yourself. It says, tell us 3 things that you like. And then it says, so that we can find TV shows and movies you love. I'm like, well, that's a great question. Thanks for asking, Netflix. So I choose 3 things that I like. And then it shows this little screen that's sort of a visual designed representation of what's happening on the back end. There's a little animation there happening. This thing's filling up, saying it's personalizing an experience for me. I get the feeling that it really cares about the interests that I just showed so that it can deliver a better product experience for me. And then after a few seconds, I'm on the main screen of Netflix, and it's showing me content that I feel is actually personalized for me. So we started off very different than the other example I gave. We start off here on the right foot, feeling like it's going to be a mutually beneficial relationship. And then this actually, continues throughout your use with Netflix. After you watch a show, it does this cool thing where it adds a little magic and says, hey, do you want to just start watching the next episode? And it will actually queue up and start for you. I don't know if it's healthy to encourage binge watching, but it feels healthy in the sense that it's giving the user what they want. And so I love this. I think Netflix is a great example. So if there's one thing that you take away from this, or one question that I would encourage you to ask yourselves, it is, what sort of relationship are you building with your product? Are you building a transactional relationship? Are you building a one-night stand? Do you want your users to spend a moment with your products and then become disengaged and move on to something else? Are you building a summer fling? Or are you trying to build for long-term commitment? And if you're building for long-term commitment, then you need to focus on how you communicate in a way that treats users how you would want to be treated, and treats users in a way that shows respect and focuses on their needs. I hope this has been meaningful, and I hope those of you building products can turn them into long-lasting love stories. Thank you very much.